If you're someone who needs to scrape data, especially if it's for things like lead generation, then you need to be learning how to use Apify in your automations. So what is Apify? Apify is a marketplace for web scrapers, everything from social media web scrapers to LinkedIn scrapers to Apollo scrapers and everything in between. It's a great tool that lets you supercharge your AI automations, especially with stuff like n8n. For example, in this workflow, I use an Apify scraper that looks at people's LinkedIn to help me generate cold outreach is actually customized. I have another one right here that looks at Apollo, where it gets a bunch of lead information, including their email, their company website, all that stuff. It comes via Apify, but it's using something like Apollo. And ultimately, why do we care about that? Well, take the Apollo example, right? So if you don't know what Apollo is, it's a third-party lead gen web app. So you go in there and you say, hey, I'm trying to find information on like fintech founders in Texas. You put that in there, and then it gives you a bunch of data on people, including things like their email, their LinkedIn URL, their organization, et cetera, which is great. The problem is it costs $60 a month or less if you do annual. But point being, you need to pay a lot for that one scraper. But what if I need a bunch of scrapers? And oftentimes, say for Apollo, I'm not using enough to really justify $60 worth. If I could get just like $10 worth of Apollo every month, that'd be perfect. Well, that's what you do in Apify. It's essentially pay as you go to an extent. And I'll go deeper into the pricing structure later on in this video, but what you need to know is you have a suite of web scrapers at your disposal here in Apify. And while it's such an awesome tool, it can be a bit intimidating to actually figure out. Even simple scrapers like this Apollo one, you get to this page and it's like, what exactly am I supposed to do here? If you don't know how to read documentation, which many people who aren't technical don't necessarily know how to do. And so the ultimate goal of this video is to show you how you can leverage Apify to use it inside of your n8n automations in a simple manner. So back to this example right here, this over-engineered cold outreach program. Where is the Apify scraper happening? Well, it's happening right here, right? Where we scrape the profile and then we get the data. Now, this inside of n8n is an HTTP request. There's no dedicated Apify module, but what it's going to look like inside is something like this. You're going to have a URL, which is going to change based on the Apify actor you're using. You're going to have some sort of information in here, like it's always going to be accept application JSON. You're going to give it your API key, and then you're going to send it some sort of JSON body. Now, this is going to be about 80% the same for all Apify actors. What's going to change? Well, what's going to change is this URL. And specifically what's going to change is everything past this v2/act. So this highlighted area. Now what's happening here? This highlighted area includes the actor ID. So the actor ID is the specific scraper. Apify uses the terms as actors. When someone says a scraper on Apify, they're also saying the same thing as an Apify actor. I'll probably use both terms here. And then the /runs. So this is saying, hey, this is the actor I want you to use, and this is what I want you to do. So for this particular one, we're saying, hey, I want you to use this LinkedIn scraper and I want you to run it. That's all I want you to do. But what do you want it to run? What sort of data are you passing? Well, in this case, we're passing this, which is a JSON.URL, which in this automation is a LinkedIn URL. So that's what it looks like on the n8n side. This is what it looks like on the LinkedIn side. So what do we see here? Well, we see the LinkedIn profile URLs. Remember how in n8n we were passing a URL? Well, this is where the URL is going to end up. And how it works is you put in a URL for this particular scraper of someone on LinkedIn you're trying to script their data. This just has a random one in there. You then run it, and it's going to go to that URL and send you all the data. Now, LinkedIn scrapers are a big one because they're very much in demand. But you have LinkedIn's terms of service policy, right? You're really not supposed to be scraping. And if you're scraping on your own account, you could get banned. Well, using Apify, it's not with your credentials for the most part. For example, this one isn't, most of them aren't with your credentials. So these scrapers are also kind of a way to get around some of these issues. So once you start it, it'll look like this. It's going to pull the image, it's using Docker, and it's finding all the information. It's going to spit it back to you as an output. Now you could do this manually, right? You can manually go to this page, you could manually put in a URL, then you could manually go to the output and you could do all this. But the power is at scale inside of automations where you're able to feed it URLs over and over and over, and it just gives you data and data and data in a single place that you can then manipulate. But this is how each individual run is working. So we gave it the URL, it pulled the data from LinkedIn, and then down here at the bottom, we'll say export one result. We can go ahead and view it in a new tab, and we see all this data they took from LinkedIn, right? The name, the followers, the work history, the email, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So that's how it works in a nutshell for this particular LinkedIn thing, right? It's going to ask for some data. The data it's going to ask for is going to be here inside of JSON, right? You'll notice this is the exact same thing as what we have here, right? That's how we got it. So then let's also dive a little more into like the URL, right? Remember how I told you that we need to have the actor ID? Well, right here inside the URL, might be kind of difficult to see, where it says actors / inside the URL in this highlighted part, that is the actor ID. So you can always find it inside of the URL. And then if we come up here to the right where it says API and we go to API endpoints, here's where we can find some of the different commands we can have. So here inside of API endpoints, you can see all the different commands you can give this particular actor. And you can go here and you can view the API reference where it goes into a little more depth. But let me tell you the big ones you're going to care about. You're going to care about run actor, right? You just want it to run. That's what I showed you in the first n8n one. And you're also going to care about run actor and get data set items. In fact, this third one is going to be the best one because what it does is it's going to run your actor and then it's going to wait for it to actually complete, and then it's going to get the data and then it's going to show you the data. Now, in this example, we just use runs. So we just use a single run and then it waits and then it does a get. We could have combined those in this particular automation by simply doing the run synchronously. So we were actually a little inefficient in that case, and this would have been able to combine those two modules into one. Get the data, collect it, let us know when you have it. Now, there's a couple key differences here. So you'll see here, we also have ax and then it does /, but instead of the letters and numbers, it just has the actual name of the actor, which in this case is Dev Fusion LinkedIn Profile Scraper. Both of those work. So I could copy this in there and it'd be the same thing as if I put in the numbers and letters that we saw in the URL. And then it has / run synchronous get dataset / items. And then there's a question mark. Now, when it comes to taking this and putting it inside of n8n, I'll hop back in here. You don't want anything past the question mark because everything past the question mark, it then gives you your API key inside of Apify. So you just want to do this first part up to that question mark and copy paste that into the URL. The rest of this you can kind of ignore because we actually manually put in our API key and the rest of the HTTP request. And I keep referencing this get actor synchronously and the get dataset items, and let me show you an example of that. So here in this Apollo lead generator, you'll see the URL that shows that, right? Does ax, does the ID, and then we have / or / run sync get dataset items. So in this case, I passed it the data I was supposed to, and then it just comes back with the output I wanted. And just like the previous example, right, you see similar setups, except application JSON, authorization, bearer API key. But what's the difference here? The difference here is this JSON. Now, where did I get that? Well, again, when we were looking at LinkedIn, we just came here in JSON and we had this, but now we're looking at the Apollo one. So let's take a look at the Apollo scraper and see what it looks like. Now here I am inside the Apollo scraper and you'll see what it gives me, right? Clean output, personal emails, get work emails, and a URL. In this case, how the Apollo scraper works is it needs a URL that it would find in Apollo, and then it goes into Apollo and scrapes the information. I won't go too detailed into that, but all you need to know is this also needs a URL. But all I had to do was copy this and then come into here and put this into the JSON payload. And the thing I wanted to manipulate was the URL it used, just like I would want to manipulate the LinkedIn URL because I always want to get a different person's information. This is where you have to map something inside of n8n. So for this example, I have a URL generator. The URL generator outputs a URL. And then every time I run it, that URL gets mapped down here. So every time I run this, I'm getting new leads each and every time. So to recap, what do we care about inside of Apify? We care about the actor IDs, and we care about this JSON payload. And the JSON payload is easy to find. The actor ID is easy to find as well. And if we ever get confused, we come over here to the right, we go to API endpoints, and we find what we're looking for. And usually that's just going to be run actor and get dataset items. So I hope that makes a little more sense in terms of what you need to be looking on Apify for what sort of data you need to find and manipulate and how you put it inside of n8n. Remember, always an HTTP request, URL will change, and the body will change. Everything else stays the same. You just need to know, based on what you're doing, what data I need to manipulate. And oftentimes it will be pretty obvious. And also, feel free to come in here when you're looking at these Apify actors and just change things, because this is like a little playground thing. It's going to cost you 0.002 of a single cent to run this, right? So play around with it, look at the different run options, mess around with the settings so you're getting the outputs you expect. Now let's talk about Apify pricing and look at the tiers. So there is a free tier, and the free tier gives you $5 off the bat, but the $5 only apply to when you're like in here playing in the playground version. You can't take the API and go into n8n with your free credits and actually have it work. You have to be on some sort of subscription. And the subscription cost is to start $39 a month. Now, you'll also notice on all these scrapers, there's a cost associated with it. So for example, this Apollo scraper, it says $1.20 per 1,000 leads. Does that $1.20 get tacked onto that $39 a month? No. Think of that $39 a month as a credit you get to spend every single month on different Apify actors. So I could run this, 35 times, get 35,000 leads basically before I hit my limit and had to go up. So that's how the pricing works. And all the actors, as you search through the store, have different prices associated with them, right? This one's pay per event. Some require a bit more, right? This Instagram scraper, $2.30 per 1,000 result. And pretty much any developer can come on here and put their own scrapers. So when you search for scrapers, right? If I look for, social media scrapers, you'll see a ton. And you can see how many people are using them. You can see how many stars they got, and you can compare and contrast prices. So you're not stuck with just a couple different social media scrapers or a couple different LinkedIn scrapers to choose from, which is nice. So that was a really high-level overview of Apify actors, how you can find them, how they work, and how you can integrate them inside of your n8n AI automations. I think Apify is a great tool, especially when it comes to lead gen stuff. You just have to kind of figure out how to navigate the place because it can be a little daunting. So I hope that answers some questions, and I would love to see what you're building with Apify and n8n. So let me know, and I'll see you guys around.